Well, hello there, Tampa Bay, and welcome to the Tampa Bay Community Network Sports Talk. I'm your host, Coach Chuck White, and my guest is Coach Jeremy Earle from Jefferson High School. We have a lot to talk about, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this show because Coach Earle has been around for some time. He's going to tell you about how he got started in sports and some of the big things he's done in sport. But first of all, I like to say, Coach Earle, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Coach. It's a pleasure to, obviously, always to be in your presence, so I appreciate it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's always a pleasure to have guys of your caliber being in here. I had you on my radio show some time ago when you were in high school, I think. Can you remember that, Fall?
Oh, I remember it vividly. It was one of my first moments of where I felt like a superstar, for sure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I can't remember all the et ceteras, but I do remember you on my show. And it was a pleasure seeing you after so long to coach Billy Reed, the legend, his wake for the funeral. He was such a great idol of people and players. And Coach Reed was a great friend of mine. I mean, we grew up together and played high school sports. And he went to Middleton, and I went to the school before it was named Blake. It was Don Thompson. We played against each other. But we got back together again when we went to FAMU. We were on the football team together, we were on the basketball team, and we were on baseball. But I know that many people want to hear about you, so let's talk about when you first got involved with sports. What about the first time you ever thought about playing sports?
Oh, well, you know, I'm a son of a coach, and my earliest childhood memories were on the sidelines of high school football games and in locker rooms. And, you know, so it was in my blood, I think, to be around sports and to want to play sports. But my first, you know, memories of sports were playing baseball in Little League. I moved to Lutz and got involved in organized sports, playing for the Lutz Little League baseball and then the Lutz Chiefs football organization. We kind of resurrected that, and then basketball during basketball season. That's what you did at the Hillsborough County Parks and Recreation, and had some great memories, made great friends, and obviously learned a lot of sport also.
How far back can you go with your coaches? How far back can you go with the players or anybody that you might like to mention some names, because a lot of people are viewing and listening to the show, and you might want to wake them up to that memory.
Oh man, I remember memories of you know, being a child at King High School with Steve Vickers running the sidelines, and all the way to where would I go? Brandon High School with Larry Bass as the head coach, and they were dominant. They had a tight end by the name of Kirkpatrick, who I remember watching, and I thought he was just unbelievable. I remember watching a quarterback at Plant City named Russell Evans, and he was amazing. And this is when I was almost, you know, just being able to walk, and I would be able to remember these guys, the greats at Hillsborough, you know, the Maurice Crums, the Mo Harrises, and then obviously being able to grow up and be able to attend Hillsborough High School was just a dream, to be able to be around, you know, guys like Juggy Anderson and Derek Edmonds and Darius Clark, and be able to walk in the same, be able to dress in the same locker rooms as all those greats before me. So I got some great memories and been around a lot of great athletes.
You didn't leave anybody out. You just
did,
about
Coach.
got quite a few of them. I remember Evans, Russell Evans, you know, he threw dots, man, bullets. He was super, yeah.
Absolutely.
But we might want to think, what was your first sport and how did you get involved with that organized sport where they had referees and you traveling on the bus or whatever?
Oh, yeah. Well,
talk about some of those.
Well, I would say that would be when I went to Buchanan Junior High School back in the day.
Okay.
And
middle school now.
Yeah, it was middle school now, right? And that was 8th and 9th grade. And I remember growing up in Lutz, and that was what you did. You idolized the people to be able to go to junior high school and play for Buchanan and Coach Ross, who just ran a very well organized program, and they had a lot of success there. So I remember being able to get on those buses. I was able to win the starting quarterback as an 8th grader, and
wow.
that was a big deal back then. And we ended up winning the county championship, beat Kenny Kelly in the Tomlin junior high, and I had a great game, and we had some great memories back then at Buchanan.
Boy, that's some wonderful memories, you
Yes.
know, successful memories.
Yeah.
Now, if memory serves me correctly, you told me at one time that your dad was a coach, and did he ever coach you per se, organized coaching, or did he get you in the backyard and throw the ball at you or knock you down with it or whatever? Talk about your dad coaching and everything.
Well, I mean, I've got a lot of great memories of my dad, you know, being with me in the front yard and doing that. I was the kind of kid who I would drag him out, and I always wanted to do something outside, and I have great memories of those times. But he was always my baseball coach, and obviously my football coach in Little League and those kind of things, and just had a great memory. And obviously, as I fast forward now to as being a dad myself, was one of the big influences of me now stepping down as a high school football coach and being able to spend some time being a coach for my sons. I have an 11-year-old and a getting ready to be 10-year-old, and I'm looking forward to being on the sidelines or, you know, in the third baseline, down the third baseline of those times. So.
Well, did you ever go to your dad's football games or whatever he was coaching? Did he ever carry you out there, or you attend that, you and Mom, or just how was that done?
Coach, that was my dream. As a child, I would be able to. It was Friday, and all day I couldn't wait to be able to go to my dad's football games. And he would let me in the locker room, and you know, and I remember the smells and the sounds of the cleats hitting the concrete in the locker room, and it was just amazing. And the way that I admired those football players, and they were like, you know, gods, like gladiators to me. And I was able to really get some great memories of those times, to the point where, you know, as a head coach at Jefferson, I would always see little, you know, guys around, and knowing those fond memories I had of it, I would always invite them into the locker room and let them, you know, admire our football players, and to be able to see those smiles on their faces definitely are priceless.
You know, when I came up, many of these schools didn't have these football fields or had these locker rooms. They may have had a bus, and they lean up against the bus or get on the bus when it was cold and they talk. But after you talking about the cliques you would hear, I used to go to where University of Tampa is, used to be Phillip Field. I don't know if you can go back that far. It used to be Phillip Field. And I used to see Al Yakunas, Cookie Rodriguez, and all these big-time players coming. I would hear those cliques. Boy, that was a great feeling, man, to hear those cliques. And I couldn't get in the locker room to smell that athletics, smell anything. But the big boys would always show us that we didn't go to camps or clinics. We go in the back of the schoolyard or the front or someplace where the field was, and we would have those guys come out there and just show us how to catch a football, how to throw. We didn't do much punting, because even when I played high school football, we ran that ball on fourth down a lot. But I just enjoy hearing you say that about those cliques, the smell of the locker room. Yeah. And when I was coaching, little guy was in the block. They used to say, "Coach, can I go to the game with you?" I tell them if they earn it, they had to cut my grass or shine my shoes or something. They look at my little football cleats, and I would carry them in the locker room. Man, their eyes would just be wide open.
Awesome.
But that's something every kid wants to do, and if you have a chance to let him do that, let him do that.
Oh, please do.
Yes. Talk about some of the guys you coach with, or some of the guys you talked about some of your players. Talk about some of the coaches you had through your years.
Oh man, I've been able to, really blessed to be able to play under some great coaches, guys like the legend Billy Reed,
Yes.
and the baseball, but just to be able to, as you see now as a man, all of those lessons that you were learning, as a teenager, you were hard-headed and didn't always understand everything, but being able to play under Earle Garcia, being able to, endure the success that we had and understand the things that went behind the scenes, and what it took, and to be able to play for my own father in Little League and be able to experience that with each other was great. And to be able to work as an assistant coach, under principals, like Louis Diaz and Dan Bonilla, who are at Jefferson, were just amazing. Guys like Bob Morgan, the late Bob Morgan, that were so integral to our success there. And, as an assistant, being able to work under Mike Helt when we first started Alonzo football over there when they started that before I went to Jefferson, and then be able to be an offensive coordinator under Mike Fenton was very valuable to my success. And then, the wonderful assistants that I was able to have, guys like, Joe Medulla, who is now the newly hired head football coach there, and they're going to do a great job. But all the wonderful assistants that I was able to have, the Ricky Sailors of the world who were out there doing great things. The Jeremy Burness, the Lionel Bryants, which is a big name around the Jefferson community. Carl Canyon, Dan Lee. There's so many, Coach, but those guys are just invaluable, and they're all football guys, and they're all for sports and understand the things that sports can do for young men. So,
well, I used to come out and watch you guys practice, came to all of the games because I had a very special interest there in my grandson, who was my adopted son, David White.
Yeah, yeah.
And David talks about you quite often, and he's been through college and played linebacker at the great FAMU and all. And I noticed the guy who rode the motorcycle, what was his name?
That's Dan Lee.
Yeah.
Dan Lee, yeah.
He would always come around and talk. And David talks about Jefferson and some of the things went on and whatever have you. And your quarterback, Quentin
Williams.
Went to Bethune-Cookman.
Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah, he was quite a card. You want to say something about him?
Oh, he was a special young man, wonderful competitor, great young man who worked his butt off. And obviously he had a whole lot of God-given ability, but the leadership skills that he brought and to make everybody else around him better was just a knack that he had. And he set records and may still hold the records in the state of Florida. He broke all of Tim Tebow's records.
Wow.
Back in those days for a single season. I want to say he threw over 50 touchdowns in 1 year. Nobody does that anymore.
He was amazing. He was amazing.
And off of that 2010 state championship team, we had 5 pros, the guys that ended up, being in somebody's pro camp. And so that makes you a good coach too when you get athletes like that. But Quentin was the glue that held it all together. And whenever someone says Quentin Williams, a big smile comes to my face.
Well, let me say this about Quentin. You used to scare me a little bit, and I have to admit that. I believe on 4th down you didn't punt or something, and you threw that ball. When I say you called the play, of course,
sure.
and he threw the ball down to the guy went to South Florida. They called the Freak.
The Freak Show, Andre Davis.
Andre
Absolutely.
Davis, and he caught it. I said, oh, Lord, thank God, because that ball would have been. I said, man, why do they keep depending on Quentin so much? Why do they depend on him? But you obviously knew that he had the talent and he would come through, and it would be a little scary, but he would come through.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when many coaches wouldn't take that chance with their quarterback, I guess because They didn't have the Quentin Williams talent.
That's true.
Now, my grandson is going to be watching this show, and you might want to say something about him that might be.
Oh, David White was a special. I still remember when you and him pulled up to the school, and what a special young man, and you guys did a wonderful job raising him. But special player who ended up going and playing at FAMU, great outside linebacker, you know, and I hear he's just now graduated from FAM and is ready to get into the workforce, and hopefully we can get him out there coaching also.
Right. He would love that. You know, David also ran track.
Oh, yeah.
And I would be in the stand just, come on, David, come on, David. And I guess I probably was the loudest one in the stand. But
oh, yeah.
When David turned that corner, man, if you ever get that inch in front of you, no catch.
Yeah, he was a good one. You know, at Jefferson, we really prided ourselves on, and they still do, prided ourselves on players, on our athletes playing multiple sports. Obviously, we were multiple sport guys in high school, and obviously, I was even a multiple sport player, and at the University of South Florida, where I played football and baseball. And I really feel that it's so valuable for these guys to play different sports. So we would always pattern our program for guys to be running track, to go play basketball, go be baseball players, obviously football players. You know, and lifting weights constantly was a wonderful attribute that you know, guys like David were able to excel in athletics and be multiple sport athletes.
Coach, I'm glad to hear you say that, because when I came up, it was two guys in Hyde Park, and I was one of them. Billy Reed was the fastest thing around there. And I was wondering, how could he run so fast? So I had to do something to compete with him. I had to be able to shoot the basketball, catch the football, and hit the baseball. And we used to sit on the porch and read about the Dodgers, especially when Jackie Robinson came along. And people thought of Billy Reed as just a baseball player and a coach, but Billy was a great football player. Billy was a super basketball player as well. We all played three sports, and most of the guys who came along, they could play these sports because they didn't overlap as they do now. If you coach in baseball, they coach baseball somewhat, so to speak, all year round. You coach in basketball, they just about coach it all around. But I can remember when guys would play all of the sports, and we happen to be a couple of them and many others. Now let's talk about how do you handle your athletes? How do they first come to you? How can they first become a Dragon, get on the Fighting Dragons football team?
Sure. Well, you know, obviously the football staff has pretty much stayed together since I've stepped down. They've hired Joe Medulla and got a wonderful staff of guys, and they'll continue to have this same success, if not more. And in order to be able to go to Jefferson, Jefferson's a very unique place, as it has the tradition of, you know, the long-time tradition of Tampa that it's had. So we get a lot of those players whose parents were Jefferson people, whose grandparents were Jefferson people, and keep the legacy alive in that aspect. And a lot of them still live in the neighborhood. But most of our students now are coming from our magnet programs that allow students that live all around the county can still get transportation to go to Jefferson and be able to you know, keep those legacies alive and that tradition of you know, that Dragon spirit that everybody around there has. So that really is a critical component to our athletic success and throughout the whole you know, athletic program.
Well, what has one to do, a parent particularly, or the player, to get on a team? Should he have had accomplished a certain grade average, or certain size, speed, height? Talk about it.
Well, first off, you know, football is a sport for every size, every speed. There's something for everybody to do. But you know, to just to get out there and start, lifting weights, and go out there and take that first step is what I preach throughout the school, you know, and nobody knows what these young men are going to end up turning themselves into. So just to be able to take that first step, Coach, and get out there and start doing something. You know, I see so many kids now that will even graduate high school and they'll live with regrets of never trying or never even going out. So, you know, to say that there's an accomplishment that you have to have before you even go out, I would say no, go out there and try, you know, and I would really encourage you, you know, any young man or woman to go out there and give it a shot, whatever sport it is.
You play your games, and since you said you're retired, you played your games on Fridays.
Yeah.
What happened from Monday up until Friday?
Oh, man.
How did you practice? What did you do? Did you have special things you did on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or you just whatever come to mind?
Oh, please. We put so much preparation into each day of practice, and you know, it was really nice to have the same staff. We didn't have a whole lot of turnover on our football staff, and so everybody understood our you know, my concepts and what we were trying to accomplish on each days, you know. And of course, we had a practice script and a practice schedule that we would follow to the minute, and we were very precise when it came to what we were trying to accomplish. And we tried to be as detailed. I tried to always on football. You know, when we get to a Friday night, I really wanted to have nothing that would happen in a football game that we didn't practice during the week. And that's hard to do. You know, there's a lot of different situations that happen in any sport. And so I spent most of my time, you know, thinking of those situations and in those practice schedules. And we were able to execute that pretty well. And I really, you know, kind of pride ourselves on that preparation.
I could see it when I would be out there. I hear David talk about certain days it did, how well organized, and you move from one group, you got a certain group here and a certain group there and whatever have you. Now, before you became head football coach at Jefferson High School, you were the quarterback coach, if I understand that. And what are the duties of a head coach as opposed to the quarterback coach? Seemingly they work very close together because head coach many times has his quarterback coach being the offensive coordinator more so than the other people. And then the head coach wants to get in there and say yes or no about the plays. Talk about that.
Sure. Well, you know, every head coach obviously is only as good as his assistant coaches. And, you know, when I was the offensive coordinator before I was the head coach, I just loved coaching. It's in my blood, I think, and I just love it. And you know, to be a head coach, it's so hard to describe because as an offensive coordinator, you know, I thought I knew it all. I had great plays and schemes, and I could do it all. But I never had to deal with parents. I never had to deal with paperwork, and I never all the other stuff that as a head coach now put all these gray hairs in my head because you know, by the time I would get to the actual football field, it would be a relief to finally be able to do something that I love, because all the other stuff, you know, you got to deal with boosters, you got to deal with alumni, you got to deal with discipline records, you got to make sure GPAs, you got to make sure that you have footballs and inventory, and you got to make sure you have meals, and it just goes on and on and on, and not a whole lot of people see that stuff behind the scenes. And you know, it's definitely a testament to those guys out there that are putting their foot forward to be head coaches. You know, it's kind of why, you know, going back to Billy Reed, it's kind of nice as I'm now been able to be a head football coach or a head coach in general, to understand what a great legacy that really was for a guy to sacrifice his whole life, basically coaching other children and being able to give of himself so much. Now I understand what a sacrifice that was, you know, and to be able to even think even more highly of guys like Billy Reed, Earle Garcia, you know, those lists of guys that just have coached for their whole life. To be able to be that unselfish and put that much into others is just amazing.
Coach, two things water breaks and injuries.
Sure.
How do you handle injuries during practice? Do you have somebody out there, medical people, and do you have medical people during the game? And what about these water breaks?
Yeah, well, sure. The medical aspect of it, for a long time in the county, we didn't have any trainers. You know, and that was another one of my titles was athletic trainer. You know, and I had to learn how to tape ankles and tape wrists and do all that stuff before practice. You know, and doing all that. But now Hillsborough County, for the most part, every school has. I know Jefferson has a very well equipped athletic trainer, certified, and so they take care of all their treatment and all the diagnosis of sprained ankles and broken ribs and all the way down from top to bottom. So that was a huge blessing we were able to have it at Jefferson, and I know they have it. So it's as you know, those practices are safe, and obviously at games they even bring medical doctors, have ambulances and all of that. And as far as water and hydration, you know, everybody, for the most part, is so educated on, you know, the hydration. And, you know, but like we were talking about, everything is year round now. So it's very difficult for a young man to get out of shape because he's so active throughout the year that, you know, you don't really see that much anymore, to where they've even done away with two-a-days. You know, they just have long practices before the seasons because everybody's in shape. You know, it really drags the coaches down because there's so much time involved. But, you know, the water breaks is something that's important too.
Coach, you delivered quite well to our listeners and our viewers. I gained quite a bit just hearing you talk about Jefferson High School, the Fighting Dragons. And I want to say that I'm sorry to see you leaving Jefferson, but something you got in mind you want to do with your family and whatever. I hope you can see a way to get back into sports because you have so much to offer sport. So good luck to you. God bless you, and peace in Christ go with you throughout.
Thanks very much, Coach.
Well, that's it for the Tampa Bay Community Network Sports Talk. We certainly hope you enjoyed this show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. So be with us again on our next show right here on the Tampa Bay Community Talk Show Sports Show.